The students of Tristane Academy, along with the country itself, prepared for the upcoming battle that loomed on the horizon. Princess Henrietta would be leading the war efforts, alongside Prince Wales, as well as her loyal soldiers and anyone else that would fight on her behalf. A growing sense of dread and fear began to wash over the land. The fact that the country of Albion had been taken over by enemy forces, and even more so that they had set their sights on Tristane. There were even those who weren't even originally from Tristane who were looking to potentially get out of harm's way. Even Kershay had to take this into consideration. After all, she was originally from the country of Germania, so if need be, she could always go back. Of course, there were some students who were going to fight on the front lines, including Guiche, whose father was a general in the princess's army, so it was only natural that he be called into the line of duty. Louise as well, wanting to fight by her friend's side and offer her support any way that she could. But then there were the boys. Damien, Saito, Tai, all three of them. They had the information that they needed. In just 3 days' time, the solar eclipse, that was when they could go home, or at least escape this world. Who knew if they would actually go home, but they knew that that was their lead. That was the biggest lead they had gotten since they had been here. With the help of Saito and with Tai, the power of the scarab and of the lantern ring, they were able to turn an old World War II Japanese fighter plane into something high class, something Damien was capable of flying thanks to the mark of Gandalf, a powerful rune that allowed him mastery over any weapon, including a flying weapon of sorts. As such, he had the means of being able to pilot the flying craft itself, and even more so, this was going to be his ticket back home. Of course, the news was definitely surprising when Siesta and even Henrietta learned of what was going to happen, but they were supportive at least. For Saito, he remembered it quite fondly. When Henrietta learned of it, he saw a look on her face. He couldn't tell if that was joy or sadness, but still, she smiled happily. While he was her familiar, she wasn't going to hold him to it. After all, she was the princess. She could always find someone to guard her. She knew that he came from another world and he would have really wanted to go home. For Siesta, she felt the same. While she was grateful for Tai being there by her side, for everything he had done for her, in the end, she had no intentions on keeping him from returning home if he really wanted to. With a somber heart, the boys would prepare their goodbyes respectively, Saito packing what little he had and leaving the castle before making his way back to the academy where Damien was, helping make any final preparations that were needed for their potential journey home. As for Tai, he chose to use his time helping the others. An evacuation was beginning as many of the students were returning home and others were getting out of harm's way. He would personally escort Siesta back to her home country of Talbs, a province just within the domain of Tristane. Within her own town, she would be safe, hopefully far enough away from the conflict. For Siesta and for Tai, it would be the last time they would see each other. Before leaving, though, she would give him a kiss on the cheek, thanking him once again for everything, as Tai would simply fly off and return to the academy. Louise had already left to join with the army that was making their preparations. Damien was fast at work, making sure that everything was ready before he left. Louise had left him a note, simply saying that he was fired from being her familiar. If that was really all she had to say, then he guessed that that was that. Although his talking sword Delflinger had other ideas. So, partner, you're just gonna let things end like this? End like what? There was never anything to begin with. Oh, come on. You know pink stuff's got the hots for you. There's no reason to leave on bad terms. But I'm not leaving on bad terms. I'm simply making everything right. We don't belong in this world, and it's just time for us to go back home. So you're just gonna let her fight off in this war all by herself? I mean, you are Gandalf, aren't you? I'm not. I'm Damian Wayne. I come from another world. Us being summoned here, it was entirely an accident. That might very well be, but still, fortune often comes in the most unlikeliest of circumstances. All I'm saying is, do you really want to leave with any regrets at all? At the very least, you should be able to end things on terms that you can be okay with. Because after all, if you don't know how much it would take just to get out of this world, who knows if you'll ever be able to find a way back? What if I don't want a way back? You know, everyone keeps saying, make sure you don't have any regrets. What if you want to stay? What if you want to do this? What if you want to do that? I didn't ask to come here in the first place. Ever since I've been here, I've just been dragged into one problem after another, after another, after another. Does anyone else ever think that I've got my own problems, my own struggles that I have to deal with? But does anyone even ask? Does anyone even care? No, it's as if all I'm doing is just solving other people's problems, and it makes me sick. So forgive me if I don't fall head over heels and just move at every which way to everyone's beckoning call. If anything, I've given more than enough charity to everyone since I've been here. This is my best chance to get home, and I'm not going to waste it. At this point, I don't care what anyone else does. I'm setting off on that eclipse, whether I get there with my group or if I go alone. The next day, Damien would meet, along with Tai and Saito, all of them collecting their things respectively. And now, all they could do was wait. Wait for the time of the arrival of the eclipse. So, seems like today is the day we all go home, right? It seems so, Tai would say to them. Well, if this is our final goodbyes, then I gotta say, for what it's worth, I had fun. I must admit, it wasn't entirely bad. Damien looked back at the both of them. I guess so. I mean, it could have been worse. You're all admirable heroes in your own right. And I have to say, it was an honor to meet all of you. Handshakes would be exchanged amongst the three, until suddenly, Professor Colbert would come running out into the courtyard, almost out of breath. The others looking on and wondering what could be the matter. It's trouble. The village of Talbs. Talbs. That's Siesta's home. What's wrong? Albion. They're beginning their assault. There. What? I know. This is troublesome. Princess Henrietta is meeting them at the border with her forces. Before he could continue any further, Tai dropped everything. Donning the Green Lantern uniform, he went flying into the air. Damien didn't have a chance to stop him. And what was more, Saito followed shortly after. Henrietta needed his help, and he wasn't going to let her fight this battle on her own. Damien would watch as the two of them flew off into the distance to where the battle was set to take place. He was left there all on his own, wondering what he was going to do next. What was the right decision for him to take, if there was even one to be taken at all? This was what he had been working for. Everything had been leading to this moment. The opportunity where they'd finally be able to go home, to live the lives that they had once lived once again. They weren't meant to be here. This wasn't their purpose. And yet, even still, there was something compelling Damien to leave. But then there was that nagging doubt. What if he never came back? Did he really want to live with regret? The regret of things unsaid, of feelings gone unreciprocated. And even more so, did he really have it in his heart to do so? As the moons inched closer towards the sun in the sky above, the looming of his decision weighed in the balance. In the meantime, on the border of Taubes, Princess Henrietta, along with her army, stood at the ready, Louise to her left and Prince Wales to her right. Above, on the flying continent, there lay the country of Albion, now under the control of Lord Cromwell. They would launch multiple attacks on different fronts, from the Flying Dragon Squadron to the Earth Golem Army, as well as the flying ships that were going to descend upon the village of Taubes. When out of nowhere, a streak of green would appear in the sky. Siesta and the other villagers hiding within the confines of the forest, watching on as the Emerald Warrior, able to create anything with just the power of thought and will, would fend off against the flying ships. In the meantime, a warrior of blue would come flying in also, shooting down the earth golems with 2 cannons for arms, switching them to multiple forms of weapons. And finally, flying in what could only be described as a metal dragon, or to some who knew what it truly was, a pilot shooting down the multitude of dragon riders in the air. Cromwell was not pleased with the outcome of the battle, and even more so, seeing as how these 3 mysterious fighters were turning the tide of the battle. Wards would decide to take charge now, using his own wind dragon, seeing Damien once again, the wielder and the one that bore the mark of Gandalf, the legendary swordsman. Louise was surprised as well, seeing as how Damien had returned so suddenly. The eclipse was starting. If he didn't leave soon, he wasn't going to get home. Tabitha and Kershay would join them at the bottom grounds, picking up Louise and flying into the air, getting her closer to Damien as she used levitating magic to arrive to the cockpit of his plane. She looked at him with anger in her eyes, asking why he would do something so reckless, to do something so stupid, to give up his only means of going home. Damien simply ignored her whining, because she should already know the answer to that. They would turn back to see Wards flying on the wind dragon, Damien attempting to shoot him down as the final obstacle. However, the plane was out of ammo. What happened next was an engagement within the skies, both trying to take the other out. Damien would set the plane on autopilot, standing out of the cockpit holding on to Delflinger, the magic sword, the sword that was the partner to the legendary Gandalf himself, and now the next chosen Gandalf, in the Robin, Damian Wayne. The sword was capable of absorbing magic, and in doing so, would absorb the wind magic protruding from the sword of Wards. As they continued in their battle, a strange phenomena would occur within Louise, as she entered into a catatonic state of sorts. For Damien, he had no idea what was going on with her, why she was acting the way that she was. However, Delflinger would explain that the purpose of Gandalf was to watch over and to protect the Void Mage. When asking further, Delflinger would explain that void magic was the most powerful magic in the world. It was unlike any other. And the purpose of Gandalf, from legend until now, was to always serve as the guardian to the void mage user. And that was Louise. He knew what he needed to do, and as such, he would create distance with wards. Taking out a few of his batarangs, he would throw them towards the swordsman, who had managed to cut down the first two, but the third one was on target, striking him in his right eye. Wards would yell out in excruciating pain as Damien would use the plane to create distance, as Louise would send out a shockwave of void magic, destroying the enemy forces and eviscerating them down to the last man. For Henrietta and the others, they couldn't believe what had happened. In just a short fell swoop, the tide of battle had completely changed. What seemed like a hopeless campaign and a hopeless endeavor had now turned to the side of victory, as the country of Tristane had carried on in the day and had gained victory. However, for Damien, in the midst of battle, one of the wings of the jet plane had been shot, and they found themselves spiraling down. Although at the last second Damien was able to eject, holding on to Louise, he would glide in the air and arrive to the ground, the plane crashing next to him. As Louise got her bearings together, looking back at Damien, she would continue to beat on his chest profusely, angry at him for destroying his only opportunity to get home, as just as they had managed to land, the eclipse had come to an end. Saito would join them shortly after, along with Tai, the three boys looking at one another and realizing what they had done in that moment. They had sacrificed their only means of going home. There was no telling when the next solar eclipse would be. It could be a few months, a few years. That was something only time would tell. Immediately, Henrietta would come running through as she jumped off of her horse and immediately jumped into Saito's arms, the two of them falling to the ground. The princess, with tears of joy, seeing her familiar, her friend, had come back to her. Siesta had spent her time running as well, until eventually she caught up to Tai. In that moment, selfishness had taken over, but the girls didn't really care. What mattered to them in that moment was what they held close to them. The boys of which they had summoned to this world, the ones of whom had developed a special place in their heart, one that could not easily be changed or taken away. In the midst of happiness and celebration, something unexpected would take place. Something not even Damien was expecting to happen, as he felt his lips being pressed upon by none other than Louise. It was definitely a bold declaration, to say the least, one not for the faint of heart. However, the pink-haired mage had made claim to what was rightfully hers. Of course, was this a love confession? Yes, no, maybe, something in between. It wasn't easy for one to confess one's feelings, and when dealing with the likes of these two, it would hardly be considered an understatement. However, even still, it was put out into the open, something that could not be taken back, and Damien would respond in kind. Although what was a blushing moment, filled with romance and passion, was quickly placed with embarrassment as Louise found herself chasing after the young Robin. In the meantime, Cromwell would be captured, and it would be discovered that the sacred treasure, the magic ring that the water spirit had been searching for, was in his possession. Damien, Saito, and Tai would return the artifact to the water spirit, who was impressed, but not surprised. After all, a promise from Gandalf was more than enough, a guarantee, and it was a promise that Damien had lived up to. In the meantime, the boys would reconvene once more. They had to decide what they were going to do next. What appeared to be their only chance of getting home had all but escaped their grasp. "Well, it can't be helped," Damien would say. "What do you mean? We probably gave up our only chance to get back home." "Maybe not. After all, I've been doing some studying." "It's what you've been doing since we got here," Saito would say. "Anyway, void magic is very versatile. It could be the key to us getting home." "You mean Louise? You think she's capable of doing that?" "Who knows? But I see a lot of potential in her. Maybe she could be the key to us getting back to our home worlds. Or she could be the key to the gateway of the multiverse itself." There were so many explorations that were meant to be had. This world was unknown, all of its mysteries lying out there just waiting to be discovered. This story that you have embarked on is the tale of 3 young men, each one that came from a different world, but one in particular who would become the greatest of them all. This is the tale of the Robin and his adventures in a land far from home. However, as you continue on in this journey, through the trials and tribulations that may come, know that even in the midst of darkness, you can soar above and fly into the light. So, listeners, may you be well, safe travels one and all, as you journey through the multiverse. In the meantime, within a dark lair, a man whose right eye had been slashed out staggered within the chambers of his master. A man that sat on the throne. I can't say I'm surprised. It is to be expected. Not only did you go up against Gandalf's reincarnate, but you went against him. And so hastily, I might add. It was a mistake, Master, but I promise it's a mistake I will rectify. Please, bless me with the Lazarus. I will do no such thing. I will heal your wounds, but your eye, that I will not heal. But why, Master? I need my... It will serve as a reminder. Let it be what motivates you, what drives you. From henceforth, you are no longer Wards, the dragon tamer, but now you will become something else. You will be the blade that will enact my judgment on this world. I now dub thee Deathstroke. Wards would bow to his master as he staggered out of the chamber. I'm surprised you chose to keep him alive, Master. All he's done is fail you at every which way. He couldn't form the marriage alliance, and what's more, he lost to a mere child. I assure you, that is no child. And I should know. I've watched him since the day he was born. If you have such a close relationship, then why not bring him into the fold? Because it takes time to craft and to mold something just right. If you try to go too soon and too hastily, you will make mistakes. I made the mistake of letting him fall into the hands of his father. But now I have a chance to rectify it. Yes, the detective, his way of thinking, it's so primitive, limiting. He tends to forget. He may be the son of the Dark Knight, but before that, first and foremost, he is the grandson of the demon. He will fall to our side, but patience, that is the key. If you are waiting, and if you are able to see things through, then the bigger picture will lie before you. There are so many things in this world, more so than just the mere legends. No, this world has an even greater depth, one that we will claim for ourselves when the time is right. So, all that's left is to let the pieces fall into place. So now, Damien, what is your next move? This concludes Familiar of Zero, Tales of the Robin. What If Robin Was Louise's Familiar? Season 1, Part 6, the Season 1 finale. As always, when we get to the end of a series, I want to take the time to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who has been supportive of this series from the very beginning and those who will catch it on in the near future. Thank you for your engagement and for following along with this story as we journey into the next leg of the anime DC series. And do stay tuned for more that is to come out now and in the future. Next Monday, we're going to be starting a new series here on the channel, that being Campione, Fury of the Gods. What If Godo Was Shazam? Season 1, Part 1. Do stick around for that and everything else that's to come at PowerCore Productions now and in the future. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington, signing off, and I'll see you next time.